Elena knew something was off the second her badge didn't beep green at the office door. No cheerful chirp, no smooth click unlock, just a red light blinking like a warning flare on a highway shoulder. The security guy, new, young, all neck and no nuance, shifted awkwardly and muttered something about access changes. She gave him a quiet smile, turned, and walked around to the side entrance. No scene, no protest, just a pair of low-heeled shoes clicking on concrete with the rhythm of a woman who's been invisible so long she's learned to haunt hallways. Upstairs, her cubicle still had the sticky note on her monitor. "Remember to breathe, dummy," written in her own hand during a late-night code freeze in 2018. That night, she'd slept under her desk with a broken vending machine Pop-Tart and one eye on the server logs. The system had crashed at 1:12 a.m. She had it back online by 1:28. No one remembered that. Just like no one remembered, she was the one who designed the heartbeat algorithm at the center of Arkova's predictive engine. That code loop she'd debugged that morning from home, it had been silently bottlenecking data velocity across their top-tier client dashboards for over 6 days. 6 days of half-broken metrics. Clay didn't notice. Clay was busy renaming departments things like innovation funnels and hiring people named Skylar with MBAs in disruption theory. But Elena fixed it before she even brushed her teeth. She sipped stale coffee from her Introverts Unite, separately mug, pushed the patch, logged it in a changelog no one else read, and drove to work with the same exact lunch she brought every Tuesday. Turkey wrap, baby carrots, and the last ounce of hope that someone might say thank you. Spoiler, they never did. And hey, since 97% of folks listening to stories like this don't actually subscribe, maybe hit that little button. It's free, helps the team, and honestly keeps me from turning into Clay. You don't want me buying hoodies that say Synergy King. Now, back to our tragedy and slacks. By 8:17 a.m., Elena had reviewed the overnight query backlog, flagged 3 bad SQL pulls from an overeager junior analyst, and noticed a weird OAuth token regeneration pattern coming from a partner node in Munich. She wrote a quick note to engineering about it. She'd done all this while listening to lo-fi beats and microwaving a damp paper towel to unstick her sad desk salad from the Tupperware. At 8:32, she received a calendar invite titled Restructure, meeting mandatory attendance from Clay's assistant. Clay didn't use her name, just team member. She walked into conference room Delta at 9:04 on the dot. No coffee offered. Clay was leaning against the glass wall like a frat boy giving a startup pitch to his own reflection. His suit looked expensive in the way cheap ambition does, shiny, tight, and one sneeze away from a split seam. He didn't sit down. "Elena," he said like he was practicing empathy in a mirror. "We're moving in a new direction." She didn't blink. "You've been with us since the early days. We respect that," he said, pronouncing respect like a child guessing at a spelling bee. "But we're optimizing legacy overhead, and your role no longer aligns with our streamlined vision." That's how she learned she was a spreadsheet cell, overhead, a subtraction problem with a pension. He handed her a pre-folded termination letter. She opened it, scanned the words, didn't laugh, didn't cry. She just looked at the final signature line, authorized by Clay Huxley. Chief Executive Officer. She slid the letter back in the envelope, nodded once, and said, "Noted." Clay blinked, maybe expecting a scream, or a "but I built this place," or a sob about retirement funds. She gave him none of that. The escort came in, some HR woman named Shauna, eyes wide with discomfort. Elena stood, collected her coat, and walked out without even glancing back at the server room she'd once slept in during a blizzard because the firewalls needed manual refresh every 4 hours. In the elevator, she looked at her reflection. No panic, no rage, just a slow, small smile like someone seeing the last puzzle piece finally click into place. By 9:11, she was home again. The cat blinked at her. By 9:13, she opened a separate laptop. Black case. No stickers. No Arkova security tags. By 9:15, she logged into a portal not listed on any Arkova server. And at 9:16 a.m. sharp, she submitted one document. Subject line, formal notice of license termination. Hartwell Technologies. Clay would receive it 1 minute later. And 1 minute after that, he'd scream a question that would shake the glass in the boardroom. "But that part's coming. We're just getting started." 9:06 a.m. That was the moment. Exact timestamp printed at the top of the termination letter like some bureaucratic death certificate. Tuesday, 9:06 a.m., as if they wanted the eulogy for her career to start before her second coffee kicked in. The chair in front of Clay's desk was already pulled out for her. Nice touch, like laying flowers on a grave before the body's cold. Clay didn't bother looking up from his iPad when she walked in. He just tapped at something, probably LinkedIn or that dumb golf simulator he kept open during budget meetings, and said, "Take a seat, Elena." She didn't. He glanced up, slightly annoyed like she was ruining the script. "We're making some strategic pivots," he began, using the same voice he used to describe oat milk at the last all-hands meeting. "As you know, legacy systems are being evaluated for redundancy and cost inefficiency. Unfortunately, your role falls within that framework." She waited for him to finish. It was like watching someone try to read Shakespeare with marbles in their mouth. "We appreciate your years of service, and we want to make this transition as graceful as possible." He handed her the envelope like it was a party invite. Pink slip, severance packet, NDAs that probably still smelled like fresh toner. All pre-signed, all assuming she'd tuck her tail, nod politely, and vanish. She asked only one question. Is there a reason I wasn't consulted before this decision? Clay gave her a smug shrug. It's above your pay grade. Legal signed off. Of course they did. He nodded toward the door like this was a dentist's office and her cavity was filled. HR will help you clear out your things. Best of luck. That was it. No handshake. No thank you. Not even a copy of the exit paperwork for her own records. Just a smug smile on a man who didn't know what he'd just stepped on. The HR rep, bless her well-intentioned corporate soul, looked like she was walking a rescue dog into a kill shelter. I'm really sorry, Elena, she whispered as they passed the IT bullpen. I didn't even know you were on the list. Elena just nodded. She kept her eyes forward, past the whiteboards she helped fill, past the junior devs who used her annotated SQL diagrams without ever asking who made them, past the data visualization wall she designed in 2016 when the company landed its first big retail client. She wasn't allowed to touch her desk, not even to grab her mug, the same mug she'd used every single day since they moved into this building. Don't mess with my metrics, a gag gift from her old intern, Mallory, now 3 promotions deep and managing a regional team in Toronto. They handed her a box with her name written in Sharpie Morgan and told her they'd mail it. She could see the corner of her sweater poking out, the one she kept on her chair for cold mornings. The sleeves were curled, probably still smelled like peppermint tea and quiet disappointment. She didn't argue, didn't fight. She just rode the elevator down with that same HR woman, both of them silent as a funeral car. But just before the doors opened on the lobby, Elena did something unexpected. She smiled, just once, barely like a ghost remembering its own funeral. Then she stepped out into the sun, blinking like someone waking from a long beige dream. She walked to her car, put her bag in the trunk, and drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other tapping a rhythm on her thigh. Something old, something sharp. The house was quiet. The cat meowed. She poured a glass of water, sat at the table, and finally opened her laptop, the other laptop. The black one she never brought to Arkova. No stickers, no fingerprints. Just matte plastic and cold intent. She booted it up, entered a string of characters. The screen loaded a portal with a blue logo. Hartwell Technologies admin access. The name blinked in the upper corner. Hartwell. She hadn't used that name in years. Not since the ink dried on her marriage license. Not since she took Morgan like some kind of camouflage. She pulled up the contract. Line 14, subsection 3.2. Termination of licensed use upon dismissal of key personnel without due cause. She smiled again. This time with teeth. Then with one clean click she opened a new form. License termination initiation. There would be no warning, no phone call, no dramatic speech. Just a slow, silent countdown that had already started ticking the moment that red office badge light blinked her out of their system. She hit save draft, not submit, not yet. She had 48 hours to pull the trigger. And Clay Huxley had no idea that he'd just fired the one woman keeping his billion-dollar company breathing. The lawyer's office smelled like burnt coffee, old leather, and long-game revenge. Elena sat across from Gerald Mayers, her counsel for over 15 years, watching him comb through the contract. She wrote in the middle of a thunderstorm back in 2010. The day Hartwell Technologies signed its first and only exclusive software licensing agreement with Arkova Analytics. Elena had been younger then, still naive enough to think that meritocracy was a real thing and not just the adult version of Santa Claus. Clause 7.3, Gerald muttered, licking his finger to flip a page. Breach via bad faith termination of founder-integrated personnel. He glanced at her. We buried it deep, but it's watertight. Yanked the plug on you without cause, without consultation, and with documented disregard. He slid the folder toward her. The contract glowed under the fluorescence. Her name sat clean and proud on the signature line. Elena Hartwell, founder and CTO, Hartwell Technologies, LLC. She hadn't signed anything with that name in years. It felt almost ceremonial, like lighting a match after soaking a bridge in gasoline. You sure you want to go through with it? Gerald asked. She met his eyes. They made their choice at 9:06. I'm making mine at 9:16. He gave a single, slow nod. They'll have 48 hours to reinstate you, or they lose access to every licensed module running Hartwell code. Predictive loop engines, dashboard visualizers, real-time model pushers, and the biometric unlock protocols. She added quietly, sipping her tea. They're all routed through the same license handshake. Gerald blinked. Even the sandbox environments? They never noticed I controlled the dev environments too. My name isn't on them, just a small variable string in the encryption key. A beat of silence passed between them, not tense, just reverent. Then, without flourish, she signed the termination notice. One stroke, one pen, one lifetime of overlooked brilliance compressed into 3 clean letters. Hartwell. The next morning, the world was still sleeping when Elena woke up at 5:12 a.m. She didn't need to. The email wasn't scheduled to go out for another 4 hours, but she liked the quiet, liked the stillness. Her house was modest, a one-story ranch with creaky pipes and hydrangeas that bloomed like clockwork every May. She made her coffee the slow way, on the stove, watching the bubbles rise as if they too were waiting for the storm. At 7 o'clock, she took a walk, just a loop around the block. A neighbor waved. A golden retriever barked our trash can. At 8:45, she logged in. At 8:52, she attached the termination notice to a secure client brief on her legal portal. At 9 o'clock on the dot, Gerald sent the internal CC to Arkova's legal division. And at 9:16 a.m., Elena pressed send on the final notice. Subject: urgent termination of license agreement, breach of clause 7.32, legal at Arcovanalytics.com from E. Hartwell at Hartwell.com attached. Signed termination letter, effective in 48 hours unless breach is remedied. No message body, just the clean sting of corporate legality. She didn't include a smiley face. Didn't write we need to talk. No theatrics. Let them figure it out. Let them wonder who Elena Hartwell was. Let them call meetings, raise voices, flip through contracts they never read and scream at interns to find out what the hell Hartwell Technologies even is. She sat back, sipped her coffee, and opened her laptop to watch the cascade. Server logs, ping reports, backend diagnostics, all quiet for now. But in 48 hours, the core heartbeat inside Arkova's predictive engine would flatline. She hadn't built an exit, she'd built a fuse. And at 9:16 a.m., she lit it. The boardroom smelled like panic and citrus floor cleaner. Clay slammed the printed termination notice on the glass table so hard the paper slid halfway down to legal's end. The interns jumped. His assistant Lindsay, normally the queen of performative calm, blinked at the subject line on the email and whispered, Did she even work here? Who the hell is Elena Hartwell? Clay barked, pointing at the name like it was radioactive. Silence. Not the respectful kind. The we don't know and we don't want to guess wrong kind. The lead counsel, Marcia, flipped through a stack of personnel files with the speed of someone trying to defuse a bomb with sweaty fingers. There's no Hartwell in the system. Not on payroll, not in vendor lists. No signed contracts under that name in the last fiscal year. She's threatening to shut down our entire software suite unless we reinstate someone named Hartwell. This isn't a prank. This is a license kill notice, and it's legally binding. He pointed to the clock. 9:21 a.m. We've got less than 48 hours or our predictive modules go dark. His voice cracked. That includes the investor dashboards and the biometric compliance flags. Now the CFO looked up. Wait, that would mean yes, Kyle, Clay snapped. It means everything. A soft cough came from the corner. Ethan, a junior analyst barely old enough to rent a car, raised his hand like they were in a community college class. I don't know if it's helpful, he began, adjusting his thrifted tie, but when I was onboarding I found this old internal training doc in the archive. Like really old. And it was signed by Elena Morgan, but the digital cert tag listed the author as E. Hartwell. I thought it was like a template error. The air shifted. Marcia snatched her laptop, typing furiously. Clay narrowed his eyes. Elena Morgan. Woman we fired Tuesday? She was the back-end architect, yeah, Ethan said. I think she had her hands in like basically all the core modules. Clay's jaw clenched. Someone in operations pulled up her employee file. Sparse. No LinkedIn updates, no conference panels, just a long list of bug tickets she resolved before anyone knew they were bugs. She kept everything running, Ethan said, quietly. Like scary quietly. Marcia looked up from her screen. Pale. Found it? License agreement between Arkova Analytics and Hartwell Technologies, LLC. Dated August 12, 2010. Author, E. Hartwell. Clause 7.3. License revocation triggered by bad faith termination of founder-integrated personnel. She rotated the laptop so the room could see the clause in all its cruel, surgical glory. Clay squinted. Founder-integrated? Meaning Elena Hartwell isn't just a vendor. She's the architect. She didn't license us software, Clay. She licensed us the brain. The room went silent. Clay's face drained like someone had unplugged him from his own ego. I thought Morgan was just some dusty legacy staffer, he shouted. Nobody said she owned anything? Kyle, the CFO, raised a brow. Did you ever ask? Clay's mouth opened, then shut. No one spoke. The power dynamic in the room shifted like a slow-moving tectonic plate. Ethan whispered, almost to himself. That explains why the old dev environments were tagged with HRTW strings. I thought that stood for hardware test right or something. Clay sat down hard. She owns the IP, Marcia said quietly. The predictive loop algorithm. The real-time push protocols. Hell, the compliance wrappers are all nested inside her licensed kernel. And she's given us 48 hours to reinstate her, Kyle added, scrolling the notice. Which, technically, can't do without admitting breach. Clay didn't speak. The man who spent the last 6 months replacing seasoned staff with cronies from his fantasy football league was now staring down the barrel of the one woman he'd erased in a morning and never thought to Google. She was in this building for 18 years, someone said. No one even noticed her desk was empty, said someone else. But now they all knew her name, and Clay. Clay was finally realizing the most dangerous people in tech aren't the ones speaking on stage. They're the ones building the stage. Quietly, patiently, with legal tripwires in the floorboards. Thursday, 7:42 a.m. Arkova's backend system began to twitch. Not collapse, not explode, just twitch. like a migraine behind a firewall. Tiny alerts started surfacing in engineering Slack. License ping timeout retrying, followed by auth handshake failed 504 gateway error. A DevOps contractor flagged it as an environmental hiccup. Another chalked it up to a stale container. No one panicked. Yet, by 8:05, the primary prediction dashboard for 3 enterprise clients wouldn't load historical data. The display read null in places where it used to project quarterly trends, now looking like a magic eye puzzle of useless blanks. Someone rebooted the proxy servers. Someone else tried to roll back the last Git push. A third person Googled can DNS poisoning cause selective API failure in a private tab. At 8:22, a junior engineer finally clicked the licensing diagnostic log, buried 5 layers down in the system tree. The word invalid blinked next to core algorithm license Hartwell Technologies, and then next to it, grace period remaining 24:53, 17 it was counting down, in real time. Clay didn't show up to the war room until 8:45. He was 15 minutes late because he was too busy Googling can you reinstate fired employee without admitting fault. He stormed in, red in the face, and overdosed on cologne. Why the hell is our flagship product throwing errors? Marcia, legal, didn't look up from her laptop. Because the license is expiring, and the system knows it. Then override it. She looked up now, slowly. You can't override a kill switch she wrote into her own intellectual property. You fired the keyholder, Clay. You don't get to keep the kingdom. Clay turned to IT, patch it. Redirect the handshake to a new credential path. Engineering shook their heads. We tried. It's hashed to her master key. And that key is encrypted with biometric salt, not facial. Retinal. Clay blinked. Someone whispered. It's why she always wore glasses. They were feeding the unlock. Are you telling me her eyes were the root pass? Yes, engineering replied. And you escorted her out of the building without letting her log out. Clay sat back in the chair, breathing hard through his nose. By 9:10, a pre-written email hit Arcova's entire client list. Dear valued client, please be advised we are conducting routine backend maintenance on certain data prediction modules. During this period, you may experience brief service interruptions. We appreciate your patience. The Arcova engineering team routine. The kind of lie you wrap around a detonator. Meanwhile, at a quiet cafe with dim lighting and jazz leaking through the speakers like fog, Elena stirred oat milk into her coffee and clicked open the SEC portal. Arcova's Form 10Q filings weren't late, but they were curious. Language shifts. Phrases like potential asset risk exposure and dependency reevaluation of third-party technology providers had snuck into the footnotes. She sipped slowly. The mug had a chip in the rim. She liked it that way. 2 booths down, a man in an Arcova hoodie scrolled through his phone with a face like someone watching their house slide slowly into a swamp. Elena didn't know him. She recognized the look. Buried in the cafe's Wi-Fi stream, she refreshed a private status monitor tied to her Hartwell kill clock. License termination in 24:05:38. She smiled, not giddy, not smug, just satisfied, like a faucet finally stopped leaking after years of quiet drip drip drip. Years of being talked over. Years of fixing code in silence while Clay held press junkets about disruption. Years of getting emails that started with hey can you just real quick and ended with you're a lifesaver, without ever bothering to ask how the system even worked. She didn't want them to crash, but she did want them to feel it. Every keystroke she ever made, every protocol she ever stitched into the guts of that company like a ghost with a wrench. Her phone buzzed once. A former colleague, just 2 words, you knew. She turned it face down and opened her book. Let them scramble. Let them lie to their clients. Let Clay break every chair in that boardroom if he wanted. The clock was ticking, and Elena Hartwell had nothing else on her calendar today. The first olive branch came disguised as a typo. At exactly 2:03 p.m., Elena received an email from Lindsay H. at ArchivAnalytics.com with the subject line, Administrative clarification regarding Tuesday's action, like she'd been temporarily misplaced in a filing cabinet rather than exiled by spreadsheet. The message was syrupy. Hi, Elena. There seems to have been a mix-up in your termination paperwork. Our sincerest apologies. We're eager to reinstate your position immediately, of course with a few structural updates to reflect our evolving operational framework. Please review the attached doc and let us know how you'd like to proceed. Looking forward to having you back. Smiling face with smiling eyes warmly, Lindsay attached. A contract barely 1 step above indentured servitude. She'd be director of legacy systems transition under a 6-month, at-will contract with no ownership rights, no license oversight, and a clause that required her to train the very people who replaced her. The kicker, they'd slashed her salary by 30% and added a non-compete rider so broad she couldn't even code a grocery list app without violating it. Lena forwarded it to Gerald with one line, let the games begin. At 3:11 p.m., Gerald responded on official letterhead. 2. Arcova Analytics legal your client unilaterally terminated an individual whose name was contractually tied to a core license agreement, triggering a breach under Clause 7.3 of said contract. Our client has not initiated hostile action. She has merely enforced a protective clause against breach. The attempt to reclassify this termination as administrative error is disingenuous and unsupported by internal timestamp logs and digital correspondence from your executive leadership. Should further coercion or defamation occur, we will proceed with injunction filings and damages claims. Kindly govern yourselves accordingly. G. Mayers-esque. Clay's tone changed fast. By 4:00 p.m., he called her directly. She let it go to voicemail. He left a message that started friendly and slowly unraveled like a discount sweater. Elena, hey, just wanted to clear the air. We've all had a hectic week, right? Honestly, this whole thing, probably a clerical snowball. No hard feelings. 10 seconds of silence. Then, but if you think you can just hold an entire company hostage over some dusty-ass license clause, you're sorely mistaken. This is borderline sabotage. You're screwing hundreds of people over some personal vendetta, and another silence. Longer, a throat clear. Look, let's talk, be reasonable. Call me back. She didn't. Instead, she watched the voicemail transcript scroll across her screen like a confession. At 5:27 p.m., Marcia from legal sent a terse follow-up. If Miss Hartwell would prefer to resolve this quietly, Arcova is prepared to offer a settlement for immediate reactivation and long-term license transfer. Elena read that twice, then clicked open a Word doc and typed 2 words in bold, 48-point font. Not interested. She didn't send it. Gerald would handle that. Instead, she opened her old email archive and searched for Clay's name. Over 200 hits. Subject lines like "need this yesterday," "add this to Q2 roadmap," and her personal favorite, "can you make it smarter but simpler?" She scrolled through years of him demanding brilliance like it was fast food. Messages where he took credit for predictive gains that came from her lines of code. Threads where he'd ask for explanations, then forward them to the board with "per my analysis." He'd spent years monetizing her brain while calling her a quiet rock star, that patronizing little phrase they use when they're too cowardly to promote you and too stupid to replace you. Now the system was failing without her, and his only play was to gaslight her into thinking this was all just a misunderstanding. Cold fury bloomed behind her ribs, not the kind that screamed or lashed out, the kind that files everything neatly into folders, the kind that responds with clauses, not cursing, the kind that lets the clock run down while the other side flails. The kind that had waited for this moment like a seed under concrete. She didn't need revenge, she had enforcement, and the weight of 18 quiet, underpaid, undervalued years behind her. Let them sweat, let them bargain, let them pretend she owed them grace. Tomorrow, the system would tick another hour closer to expiration, and Elena would be sipping tea while Clay watched his kingdom crack. Friday, 6:03 a.m. The markets hadn't even opened yet, but the hemorrhaging had begun. A mid-sized retail analytics client in Denver suspended their data feed until license verification is complete. Another in pharmaceuticals paused their quarterly renewal. One major logistics conglomerate, an Arcova client for 9 straight years, flagged their agreement as pending legal review and pulled out of an upcoming pilot entirely. Each message came in with that same corporate oxygen suck, polite, detached, and fatally vague. By 7:12 a.m., 4 more clients had suspended access. The license status monitor on Arcova's internal dashboard, normally a sea of calm green, now had 6 blocks blinking yellow and 2 in red. In legal's war room, someone added a new slide to the morning report deck. Client retention urgent focus list status. Volatile risk, escalating. Clay read the slide twice, then threw his clicker across the room. Call them, he barked, all of them. Tell them we're resolving the situation and it's just a matter of paperwork. Kyle, the CFO, looked up from his laptop. We've already called. They said they want license assurances in writing. As in, not from us. What does that mean? Clay snapped. It means, Marcia muttered, they want to hear it from Hartwell Technologies. 8:26 a.m. Stock opened down 4.2%. By 9 o'clock, financial blogs had picked up on internal turbulence at Arcova Analytics. One tech columnist tweeted about unconfirmed reports of back-end licensing issues. By 9:22, someone on Reddit had posted a screenshot of the license invalid contact Hartwell Technologies banner seen during a product demo call. #Who is Elena Hartwell started trending on LinkedIn by noon. Elena was in her garden. The rosemary had finally taken root. She clipped a few sprigs with quiet precision, slid them into a mason jar with olive oil, and let them steep in the sun. Her phone vibrated, face down, 3 times in a row. She ignored it. At 10:11 a.m., a message came in from a blocked number. Just 2 words, you won, she didn't reply. Then another from a number she recognized but hadn't saved. From Carla, the lead designer who once took credit for the UI Elena prototyped alone on a weekend. I was wrong. You were the spine. I'm so sorry. Then another, they're panicking. We need you. Please come back. Another, I hope you're watching this. You deserve it. She opened a new folder on her phone and titled it Reminders. Then, one by one, she took screenshots. Not out of pettiness, but because when people rewrite history, it's good to have receipts. Back at Arcova HQ, the panic was no longer contained. Engineering was being told to build around Hartwell's kernel, a task akin to building a mansion around a missing foundation slab. The predictive algorithm was ELENA's, nested, encrypted, and spliced into every input stream like veins in a leaf. The closer they looked, the more they realized nothing inside the platform moved without her logic signing off first. And now, everything was slowing. Latency up 43%, model accuracy down 17%, batch refreshes stalling out mid-cycle. Clients couldn't trust what they were seeing. And if clients didn't trust the data, Arkova was just PowerPoint with attitude. Clay called an emergency meeting. "We can't let this go public," he hissed, pacing like a tiger at a petting zoo. "Get ahead of it. Say we're restructuring. Say we're evolving the model architecture." Someone from PR dared to speak. "What if someone asks where the license went?" Clay stopped, stared. No one spoke again. At 1:45 p.m., Elena checked her email. A single new message, no subject, no signature. "I should have fought for you. I'm sorry I didn't." She closed it, no reply, just a slow exhale. This wasn't about apologies. It was about gravity shifting. Not overnight, but inch by inch, as the company that had once seen her as legacy overhead now crawled through legal rubble trying to glue together what she'd built, blind, arrogant, and 2 days too late. She poured herself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, no sugar. Outside, the rosemary shimmered in the afternoon light. In every glowing screen across Arkova's HQ, timers ticked lower. 23 hours, 19 minutes, 42 seconds. And counting. Saturday, 8:07 a.m. Elena's inbox was no longer quiet. The first message came from a procurement director at a Fortune 100 logistics firm. They'd heard whispers, unconfirmed but credible, that Hartwell Technologies owned the bones of Arkova's core engine. Their VP wanted to talk emergency options about a direct licensing path. Then came another, then 5 more. By lunch, 50 major firms had reached out, some curious, some panicked, all interested. They used language like exploratory partnership, custom integration, and urgent enterprise migration. What they really meant was, "We trusted Arkova. But Arkova doesn't own the future anymore. You do." Elena didn't rush. She answered none of them that day. Instead, she brewed coffee, opened a blank doc, and began sketching the outline of her new venture. Hartwell Insights, LLC. Consulting, licensing, and independent predictive architecture. Built with the same precision, the same math, but on her terms now. Terms that didn't include a dress code. Didn't include Clay. Didn't include building empires just to be cut out of the gatefold when the photo was taken. At 2:32 p.m., she filed the business registration. By 3:19, she reserved the domain, HartwellInsightsCom. By 4:05, she had her first NDA drafted. No logos, no neon buzzwords, just clean legal teeth. That night, Clay called her. She didn't pick up. But she did let the voicemail transcribe itself in real time. "Elena, listen. I get it. You're upset. You want to make a point. Fine, you made it. We all get it now. But let's talk numbers. I can make this right." A pause. "Triple your old rate, buyout, clean handover. You walk away with a solid payday. We retain the code base. Everyone wins." She smiled at that. He still thought this was about money, still thought this was poker, that he could bluff with paper while she held the code. She hit forward, attached the transcript, and sent it to Gerald with the subject, "For the archive." Then she opened a fresh email, drafted her own reply, addressed it to Clay personally. It read, "Clay, the algorithm isn't for sale, not at any price. And certainly not to you." Elena Hartwell. She hit send, stared out the window. The sunset spilled across her living room, painting her ceiling with gold and rust. It felt right, like stepping back into a house you forgot was yours. For years, her name had been a whisper in footnotes, a quiet thanks buried in patch logs, a myth junior devs joked about. I think Elena Morgan still lives in the system somewhere. Now, they knew exactly who she was, and more importantly, who she wasn't. She wasn't legacy overhead. She wasn't nice to have. She wasn't replaceable. She was the system's heartbeat. And Clay? Clay was standing in the ruins of a company he never really understood, still hoping to buy his way out of a tomb she'd designed with quiet, surgical patience. Elena opened her calendar, booked a Monday morning strategy call with a hedge fund VP who wanted to license her tech for a clean slate startup. Then added a reminder, order the Glassdoor decal Hartwell Insights. She'd already picked the font. Serif, understated, timeless. No tagline, no pitch, just her name, no longer hidden, no longer borrowed, and never again erased. Friday, 9:17 a.m. The Arkova conference suite was packed. A dozen C-suites from a top-tier logistics firm sat in leather chairs, watching a demo screen that had just frozen mid-sentence. A sales VP named Jordan stammered his way through a slide that refused to load. The predictive heat map, a pulsing dashboard of green and yellow indicators showing warehouse flow and efficiency metrics, had gone gray, then black. Then, finally, red. Banner appeared across the top of the screen in a font too calm for what it meant. License invalid, contact Hartwell Technologies to restore access. The client CEO frowned. Is this part of the simulation? No one spoke. Clay was already out of his seat, racing through the hallway, phone in hand. Sweat bloomed at his collar. His assistant chased after him, whispering, "We're down in the East Coast node. Europe's starting to flicker too." Inside the tech pit, engineering was silent, fingers flying, eyes locked on terminal windows that glowed like tombstones. No one could get in. The biometric failsafes had engaged. The dev environment reverted to read-only. The backup handshake attempted and failed. The license wasn't expired, it was dead, and it had taken the entire Arkova platform with it. 9:22 a.m. The board met in a side chamber on the 17th floor. No Clay, two members looked pale. One rubbed his temples. They'd received the notice from legal. License terminated per clause 7.3, breach via unjust termination of founder-integrated personnel. All associated systems are non-operational. Value at risk, $1.1b. They didn't debate what happened. They debated how to survive it. They talked about liability, about leadership transition, about distancing the board from rogue executive decisions. Someone finally said it. He fired the architect. They all nodded. Clay Huxley's tenure ended before the hour. No statement, no press release. Just a calendar update marked interim CEO strategy session 12 o'clock p.m. His name wasn't on the invite. 10:03 a.m. Elena stood outside the entrance of a newly leased floor in a clean mid-rise downtown. Not fancy, not flashy, just functional. New paint, new furniture, fresh air and better light. Last door had no gimmicks. Just a gold etching in serif. Hartwell Insights. She pressed her palm to the security pad. It lit green, the door clicked. Inside, a single orchid sat in the window, a gift from her lawyer. The whiteboard across the room had a single message written in clean handwriting. Start small, scale smart, choose better partners. Her team wasn't here yet. That was fine, they were coming. People who asked questions, who read contracts, who said thank you. She walked to her desk, opened her laptop, checked the status monitor one final time. Arkova license terminated, client redirects 27 queued pending inquiries 43. She closed the lid, sat in the stillness. Not triumphant, not vindictive, just done. Done being the ghost in someone else's empire. Done being the note they forgot to credit. Done being told she was lucky to be here, because she was never lucky, she was essential. And when the lights went out on the kingdom that forgot her name, she didn't need to shout. She didn't need revenge speeches or victory parades, just the quiet glow of her own name on her own door. Elena Hartwell was never invisible. She just waited until the exact moment the world would have to look. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.